Howdy y'all. So today we're going to be covering how to build flowers. I am going to show you the most basic way to pull a petal and a leaf. I want to leave the experimentation, the play, the excitement, and the joy of making those, your petals and your leaves, up to you. As you make them, you'll see something, you'll tweak it, you'll see something, you'll tweak it, and they'll become your own over time in the way that you most enjoy them. What I'm really focused on today is showing you how to build something with a lot of structural integrity so that when you do eventually hone in on that style of flower you want to make, then you can create them in a small, medium, large, and extra large format, depending on what it is that you need it for, in a way that is relatively easy and in a lot of ways translates over to almost every other attachment that you will make and add to a piece eventually, whether that be like a functional or non-functional sculpture. And today I have about 10 flowers worth of petals in this bag that I've pulled over the past year thinking, oh, I'm gonna make some flowers, and then just never did. So I've got a ton of petals to work with, and I'm going to show you from the front to the back how I construct my flowers. And I want to be able to give you guys a well-rounded idea about how to stack things incredibly close to each other without touching or tacking, and then creating bridges underneath everything so that even these like what seem to be extremely delicate items are actually incredibly structurally sound. So let's get started. All right, so I'm going to go over the most basic way to create a petal shape for a flower. So what we're going to start out with is our color rod, just a plain color rod. Bring it up to temperature, either in the kiln or waving it in the flame. You don't want to shock the glass, you want it to pop or burst on you. So bring it up to an annealing temperature, which is just before it starts glowing orange. Then we're going to gather a small ball back, not a ton, because what's going to happen is we're going to spread that glass out. So you don't want the ball to be the size of the petal that you want it to be. You want it to be about 2/3 or half the size, depending on the thickness of the petal. So this one's about half. So then we'll take our mashers, which, let me grab those really quickly. These are our mashers, and we're gonna put them in between like this and squeeze. Or if you don't have a pair of mashers, which I certainly didn't for many years, you have your marver on your table and your graphite paddle, and you'll place it and squish it in between and just pull away. Get that nice boop, flat puck. So now we have a flat puck of colored glass. Then we will, oh, where's my marker? There it is. Then we will handle up to the butt, just like so. And when we pull the tip, right, we're wanting this kind of sharp little petal. At least I do. That's what I like. You don't have to do that. You can add like little frilly bits. You can twist it with your tweezers. You can pull on it in different ways. You do not have to make a little sharp tipped flower. I'm just saying that this is just the way that I do it. So take that with a grain of salt. So for what I do is I put a punchy on the end of my flat colored puck. And then what I will do is I will start heating it right back here, right in the back in the middle. And then I won't add a ton of heat back here. I'm just going to add a little bit, and then I'm going to move it forward to the face of that puck where it's connected to the rod. And once I see that it's all kind of moving, but it's not molten, it's wiggling, it's moving, then I'm going to do a slight tug, and it's going to give me that lovely sharp tip with a wonderful gradient teardrop shape. You can also, we talked about teardrops in another video. You can literally just turn it upside down or vertical in the flame, allow the heat to build, and it'll just whoop, just like a teardrop. So there's two different ways to do that. Obviously, like I said, you don't have to make them sharp. In fact, where's my eraser? It's my bandana. You can take a bit of tweezers and you can just take your tweezers on the edge, heat around the edge of this, and just bend that puck back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And what you'll get is this beautiful kind of frilly shape, and it'll give it those kind of natural indentions like a flower, right? Or you can just have, I've got that stuck on there. Or you can just have a rounded petal if you want a rounded petal. Or you can pull and pluck with the tips of your tweezers and kind of make more of a fluted flower petal shape. That's what I meant to say. All right, so now that we've got our petal shape, our basic petal shape, whichever petal shape you decide, let's move on to the center. The leaf is going to be the exact same process as the petal, but when you think about the leaves, just think about, is the leaf of the flower the same size as the petal? And if it is not, it needs to be made smaller or larger depending on the size that you want for your flower. So I like to do my petals thinner than I do the robustness and roundness of my petals. So instead of it being this kind of rounded shape, my leaves are an elongated shape like that. And that just kind of gives it enough definition to show that they're different types of petals, or there's a difference between the petal and the leaf. You don't have to do that. You can make them all the same size, same shape. It's just up to your preference. So, all right, so let's do the center, which is the stem, and I forget, the stamen is what I believe the middle of the flower is called, where the pollen usually collects or is released. All right, for the stem and the stamen, it just depends on what it is that you desire. The most basic way is to start with your color rod, whatever color you want to be the center. And you can either put some color on the end of a clear, just to save on color, because you can build backwards on clear if you really want to. I like to make it all colored though. I think it makes the flower have a little bit more zhuzh to it. Or you can have your leaf color going all the way back and add a different color for your stamen. It just depends on what you want. So you just, have those ideas in your head, but make your own decisions based off of the desired effect that you want with your own personal flowers. So let's pretend for a second that, let's say this is going to be a nice light green color and this is going to be yellow. So now we've got your nice light green color and we've got your yellow in here. And you think, well, I don't actually want just a rounded ball in the center of my flower. I kind of want something a little bit more exciting. And so what I usually do, and I'm going to show you the top view of it. So this, not coloring it in super well. So this is going to be that ball on the very tip, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to squeeze. And I'm going to squeeze again. I'm going to squeeze again. Squeeze again, squeeze, squeeze. And now what I've created are these little kind of flourishes on the center of my flower. And it kind of gives it a nice shape to it. And if you think to yourself, the middle, you don't want the middle to be completely rounded. What I do is I heat up the inside of this, get in just the core, and I'll take my tweezers, I'll stick it down, and I'll twist it. And what'll happen is you get this nice kind of little shape inside. So that's how I usually make my stamens. Though you can take a piece of stringer and do push and pulls on the center of it and create a bunch of like tiny little thin pieces of stamen that come off of it. You can, just have your normal rounded one. You can do, all sorts of stuff. Flowers are just so unique. You can carve the interior of like a rose by making a ball and then making cuts with your knife until you have what would look like the center of a rose. All sorts of stuff. And you can use millies, opals. Options are endless. So now that we have our leaves, we have the center of our flower. Now we're going to start to construct our flowers. So the trick to making stacked petaled flowers is always knowing where the heat is being directed from your torch onto the work surface of your project. So, at this point, because I have been working with the direction of my heat and knowing the heat sinks and the timing to make my flowers, I don't use any more braces while creating them because I have the ability not to need that. But I did not learn that way. I learned by having the center of my flower and my clear rod on the bottom. I would take a bridge, I go up and all the way over and then come down and attach. Because what I want to do is I want to give myself enough room between the bridge and the workspace that when I come in through the side of it to attach petals, this isn't in the way. It's just up to you though. It's however you want to do it. But this way, you can really kind of goof up quite a bit and that flower isn't going to move on you at all. What happens is if you get, let's say that you attach a petal and it's too hot and that rod sinks in all funny like that, well, all you got to do is either add a little bit more color glass there or use gravity and rock it back and forth up and down until it fills back in, because that glass is going to want to go to the hottest spot. So add heat and then bring those shoulders back together to a nice even field. So that being said, let's say we've got a bridge on there. Now what we're going to do when we want to attach one of these petals is, here's our petal, here's our rod. We want to focus quite a bit of heat on the butt of this petal right there. And we're going to want to add light, radiant, but tacking heat to only this little spot. If you can see it, I'm going to circle it. Just that little spot right there. Because what's going to happen is we're going to melt this to attach it to this. But this, if you get it too hot, it's just going to bend, it's going to fall, it's going to dip, it'll dimple. So what we're doing is we're packing all the heat into the petal so that whenever we push and lightly pull it, the petal is the only one that's going to have any type of movement. This is going to stay perfectly structurally sound, and the petal will get a little, when we tack and pull it, it'll get a little bit of a divot on the bottom like that, and it'll look like a real petal when you pull it. And we're looking for that nice even pull because that means we've done a nice in between a cold and a hot seal. It's not fully welded in, but it's dang near close. So when I'm talking about tacking and pulling, it's not this push and pull. It's a push, pull. It's so small. It's, not push and then pull. Push, pull. The tiniest little pull. You don't want to pull it all the way away. You don't want to press it all the way in. So it's a very delicate movement. And that will give you room to then take a hand torch or to tighten up your flame on your torch and go on the side, underneath, the other side, and above, and melt in anything that isn't perfectly flush. If you leave a divot, it will crack. It will. It's going to want to fight you every single moment of every single day for the rest of your life. You know, you'll put it on the shelf 10 years from now, you hear tink. It's because it wasn't melted in all the way. It will find a way years after making it to crack. And I know that because I have flowers that I made almost 10 years ago. I thought, oh, I did such a good job. And all of a sudden one day a leaf would just pop off because it wasn't fully melted in all the way. So always keep that in mind. You always want everything to be nice and flushly melted in. If you leave any type of creasing, that eventually surface or internal tension will crack. It'll want to separate. That's how those little hands work. They're bound together like this, but over time they start to separate because they're an amorphous solid, right? So it means that even though it appears to be solid, it is still technically a liquid. And that liquid is gradually falling away from itself year after year, and then, breaks in half. So just keep that in mind, because when you melt it all the way in, it solidifies those bonds, and they are a forever joinment. Well, not forever, but for a very long time, a few generations at the very least. So when I attach my petals, there's a couple things I want to think about. And let's say this is the top of the rod that you're adding to. How many leaves do I have? How much room do I have? Is the core going to be wide enough to support the amount of petals that I want to put onto my flower? So what I mean by that is, let's say I'm just using round petals for this flower. I have 6 petals I want to put onto the center. Well, my petals are so big that I can only get 4. So either I need to downsize my petals or I need to upsize the core of my flower. Oops, just dropped a little piece of plastic. So if I want my petals to be that big, then I need to increase the size of my core. It doesn't need to be that big. I was a little ambitious maybe. Let's do that again. Something like that. So we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Obviously, your petals probably are not going to be that big unless you're doing this in soft glass in a hot shop. But that's just how I like to think about it. And so another trick to adding petals is making sure you give yourself enough room to make sure that there's petals. The petals will fit evenly on the same plane. So to do that, what I like to do is I like to add my north and my south. And then I need to think about my east and my west, or my northeast, my southeast, my northwest, or my southwest. And that's just depending on how many petals you have. You might have 5 petals, you might have 7 petals, and you'll figure that out as you go. But start out with an even number of petals. That way you can see it like a clock as it goes around, right? So for this one, I'm going to have 6 petals. So I'll do my north and my south, and then I'll do northeast, and then I'll come immediately diagonally southwest. And then I will do northwest, and then southwest. And that way they don't line up because they're all different sizes, obviously. But they will line up because the petals are going to all be the same size, as opposed to kind of like my goofy, loopy drawings here. Or, if you want to keep it very simple, you can do north, south, east, west. So, just like that. So that is how you're going to plan out each layer. Now, let's talk about the second layer and the third layer. So we're gonna have our first layer. Let's just say we have 4. Those gaps are now intentional because what I want to do is I want to show the petals that come beneath these petals. So now when I am going underneath to then make the second layer of petals, I'm going to put them in between these spaces. And let's say that these petals are sharp petals. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And now you can see all of those. And then for the next layer, the gapping is going to be, so we had 4 and 4. And now we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So now, go through here. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And by doing that, you're gonna have to make more petals for each layer so that it fills it out evenly and symmetrically as it goes around. And then we'll do and that's how you start to build out and out and out on different types of flowers. And every petal, different layers can be different petal shapes to give different effects. So that's kind of how I do mine. All right, so let's talk about how to give yourself enough adequate space between each layer of petals so that you can go in and do any types of adjustments or do any types of welds that you might need before you move to the next layer. So here's the center of your flower, your stamen. And this is going to be our first layer. We want to be really close to that stamen or the center of the flower because we want it to look flush and full and rich and realistic. Now, it doesn't have to look realistic. You can decide what your flowers look like, but just the ones I like to make, right? And so I'm going to do my push and pull tack welds all the way around with all of my petals. Now this segment of this layer of petals is now done. Now I'm going to decide whether or not I'm then going to lift the petals towards the stamen or the center of the flower like this by heating it up with my torch and bending those petals towards the flower, or if I'm just going to let them stay flat for a different effect. But regardless, I'm going to make that decision right now because once I add the next layer, you're not going to be able to do it. Promise. So now then, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get as close as I can to that last layer without touching it and having just enough room to get that really sharp pinpoint flame in between those 2 layers. This is the trickiest part, is getting the first 2 layers lined up so that whenever you're done with the second layer, then you can bridge to the petals before it. And then that will lock in both of those layers. And when you move down with the different layers, you won't have to worry about the petals before it moving around because it'll already be locked into place. What I mean by that is, let's say, here's your petals. So this is your first layer, and these are your second layer. And this is just a section, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a bridge right here. Nice, solid, sturdy bridge. So now both of these leaves aren't going anywhere. And this leaf, it's been bridged on 2 separate sides, so it most certainly isn't gonna go anywhere. So when I add my next layer, right here, then I'm gonna add a bridge here and a bridge here. I'm gonna melt those in and make sure they're nice and flush. So every single layer you go down, you're building more and more and more stability. And I like to add one on either side of the leaf every single time I go around. That just makes sure that nothing's moving around and everything is cohesively bridged, and there's not going to be a moment where I move around to somewhere to add a tack or to manipulate the leaves in some way and they're just going to fall over. So that's how I do it, is I make sure all of the leaves for that layer are on. They have been moved in the way that I want them to. The movement of the leaf is been placed. And then I go in with a thin piece of clear or color, doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. And I make a small bridge from petal to petal with a stringer, and then I melt it in. And that now is a proper weld and a secure bridge to add structural stability and a rigidity to something that was particularly delicate. So you can do as many layers as you want, doesn't really matter, as big of a flower or as little as a flower as you want. You just continue those steps down until eventually you get a very beautiful and robust flower, right? So that's how you do it. There is so much to talk about because there's so many variations and so many different ways to do it, and there's so much zhuzh or non-zhuzh that you can or cannot participate in. But when it really comes down to it, it's an extremely simple idea. So I'm going to demonstrate it for you now in the live demo. So hopefully, if I forgot to explain something on the whiteboard and I see it while I'm editing the video from the live demo, I'll put that text on screen for you all. But I think that should be it. And where's it going?
Suppress my feelings, 'cause I know what's best for me. Feel short of confidence, my hands begin to shake. I thought I knew you, but I barely knew your name. Porcelain stuck to your teeth, you got everything, and I can't believe how I've been let down again and again and out of stone. Talk the talk to throw a bone. For a while, sleeping like a bee. The curiosity keep the cat alive. You see, you see, you see. So leave me stranded on the carpet, head onto the faucet. You're my alibi. Fair enough, you wanna cock it, hoping I'll forget following the night. You made a joke about the half-cut, ate a metaphor and later made her cry. Well, luck's been changing and it's so apparent. Got a cold white rabbit's foot at home. Start the day. Have standing on the space. I love the scenery. My happiness is misery, and nothing's like it used to be. Cause everybody around me's feeling sorry for himself. So why the hell am I to blame? I never underestimate the impact of the fourth wall breaking down upon my feet. The offering is never bleak. I'm listening in like a kid. Just finished it, can't be undid. Leave me stranded on the carpet, head onto the faucet. You're my alibi. It's fair enough, you wanna cock it, hoping I'll forget following the night. Made a joke about a half-cut, ate a metaphor and lately made her cry. Well, luck's been changing and it's so apparent. Got a cold white rabbit's foot at home. She calls me day and night. I'm sorry girl, you just don't make me feel right. I never meant to make you cry, you were right. Just leave me be, I'm not gonna put up a fight. And every time you wake up feeling worse and then you check the time. It's never what it feels like, just throw me a dime. If everything was good, then you would feel alive. If everything was good, then you would feel alive. Everything was good, then you would feel alive. If everything was good, then you would feel alive.
Melancholy makes me feel so lonely. Didn't think you'd give up so easily. Yesterday and laughter feels so far away. I miss the old days. Memories of us keep killing me slowly. You don't really care, don't want you to hold me. If everything was good, then you would feel alive. If everything was good, then you would feel alive. If everything was good, then you would feel alive. If everything was good, then you would feel alive.
Day and ask you how it is. Why are you being cruel when we could have all this in the drive-thru? Order my food. Let's stay up all night. Let's pretend we're alright in the drive-thru. I'm in love with you. Now I know what I should do.
lonely.